I don't know why. It usually doesn't start till about the third point. So y'all bear with me this morning. As you're here we go. As you're turning there, when I worked retail for Walmart and Target and different places like that, there's something that I began to notice as I was working there. There are about 3 different kinds of people. You've got the person who comes in, clocks in, and does everything he can to do anything but work the entire time that he's there. Now, when the manager shows up, oh, he's a busy bee. He does everything he can while the manager's there watching, but the rest of the time, he's slacking off. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. Then you've got the person who shows up, does the work, but whines about it the entire time. Have you ever noticed those? They're going to complain about the work all day long. They don't like what they're doing. They don't like what they're having to do, but they're there and at least they get the job done, even though they complain about it all the time. But then you have that person who's the busy bee, that person who puts their heads down, they do the work, they don't care if somebody's watching them or not. They're going to do the job that they're there to do, and they make sure they do everything the way it's supposed to be done, whether somebody is looking or not. Well, today we're going to talk about the idea of getting noticed. But who we get noticed by is important, and who is watching is important. And so we're going to pay close attention to why we're doing what we're doing and how we're being noticed by who we're being noticed and why that matters so much. Now, for that worker, one thing that always happens is that guy that came in and did very little but always worked when the manager was paying attention, that's the guy who got all the accolades, isn't it? That's the guy who gets noticed because when the manager's watching, he's busy. But the manager doesn't notice that the rest of the time, he's not doing a thing. Well, those are the people who are trying to get noticed by man. They want to make sure that man is paying attention and that man sees what they're doing. So we're going to be looking at the importance of why we do what we do and how we do it and how we do it when nobody's watching even. If you would turn with me to Mark chapter 12, beginning of verse 38. Mark chapter 12, beginning of verse 38. Says, and in his teaching he said, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and like greetings in the marketplaces and have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses and for a pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. And he sat down opposite the treasury and watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums, and a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box, for they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. I am so sorry, folks. I don't know what's going on with my voice this morning, but what we're going to look at here this morning, first of all, is getting noticed by man. You notice this first group, they were doing everything in the marketplaces, everything so people could see them, everything so people knew that they were doing the things of God, or at least seemingly doing the things of God, and people noticed. I've got an ex-sister-in-law, and I'm going to be as nice as I can here with this. My ex-sister-in-law was really good at playing church. She was really good at going through the motions and doing the things that looked good to man, but in her heart, she wasn't a true believer. And until later on, after my brother and her had gotten divorced, it became very noticeable that she really felt that way, because now she does everything she can to speak against the church, to try to stop people from going to church. She absolutely hates the church. But for a long time, she did everything that looked good. You know, we have people like that. They do the things that are right, that look good on the outside, but on the inside, they've not really changed. And so what we need to understand is what these people were doing, what these Pharisees and scribes were doing. They were doing things that look good on the outside, but on the inside, they weren't really true believers of who Jesus was. The scribes did everything they did to get noticed. They wore the long robes. Why did they wear the long robes? Well, the long robes were worn by the scribes and Pharisees so that everybody would know who they were. So that when they walked in the marketplace, everybody knew, there goes a scribe, there goes a Pharisee. How do we know? Well, look at what he's wearing. They had a certain look about them, and everybody knew who they were. They said the long prayers. They said that even in this. It says, for pretense, make long prayers. They do these long prayers so everybody knows that when they hear them speak, they're the scribes, they're the Pharisees. They're the ones who want to show off and make sure everybody hears what they're doing. But Jesus had something to say about this too. In Matthew chapter 6, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says this about that. In Matthew 6, verse 5, it says, and when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. So they got their reward by being heard by man. Everything that they wanted to accomplish was done because man heard what they were doing, and man recognized what they were doing. But that's as far as their reward would go. Let me ask you this. Do we want to be rewarded by man, or do we want to be rewarded by God? Which is it? They were making sure that they got their reward by man. And Jesus lets them know right off the bat, they've gotten every bit of the reward they're going to get. Because they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Now, is there in and of itself anything wrong with wearing the long robes? No. Is there anything in and of itself, anything wrong with saying the long prayers? No. That wasn't the point. The point was that they were doing it for the wrong reason. They were doing it to be noticed by man. And if that's why we do it, then we've missed the point of everything that we do for him. They seek the best places in society and want to be honored by men. They give, but they only out of their abundance, and they make sure that everybody sees that they're giving. I saw a movie one time, and it was about a preacher. And this preacher, it was a Pentecostal preacher, so pardon me if I don't get this right, but he was walking around, dancing around, doing this, waving a $100 bill above his head before he put it in the offering plate. Anybody else got a problem with that? He was making sure everybody saw that he had that big $100 bill and was putting it in the offering plate. He wanted to make sure everybody saw what was going on. He wanted to make sure everybody saw that he was giving. And I'm telling you right now, he's gotten his reward. Because what does Jesus go on to say in Matthew chapter 6, or actually just before verse 5, in verses 1 to 2 of Matthew 6? It says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. For then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. I'm telling you, that preacher got his whole reward. His whole reward was everybody in the pew singing and thinking, oh, what a wonderful man of God he is, that he willingly gave. Listen, there is only one person besides me that knows how much glory I give, and that's Tim. And he's not talking. Okay? Because here's the thing. Nobody else needs to know that. Nobody else needs to be privy to that. It's not anybody else's business. That's between me and God, what we do. Now, do we give? Yes. Do we tithe? Yes. But we don't make a big showing of it. And we want to make sure that we're doing things for the right reason, that we're not doing it to show off and for everybody to see what's going on. These guys had their reward because everybody saw it and thought, what a great thing they were doing. You notice when he gets to the widow here, it says that many of them were giving out of their abundance. They were giving out of everything that they had, or giving out of what they had. And they were giving their leftovers. They were making sure they had enough to live on, making sure they were doing everything else to have a comfortable life, and then they gave to God whatever was left. Now, that might have been the 10%, but I want to point something out real quick about the 10%. I'm going to stop preaching here and go to meddling, okay? Because I want us to understand what the New Testament says about tithing. What does the New Testament say about tithing? Absolutely nothing. The New Testament doesn't mention it. But what it does say is that we are to give generously. We are to give sacrificially. We're to give not just out of our abundance, but even out of our poverty. We're to give when it hurts. That's what we're supposed to do. And let me tell you, that goes above the 10%. It goes above and beyond the 10%. And we are to give and to give generously in that way. But we're not doing it so that other people see. We're not doing it so that everybody looks and says, well, look how religious they are. Look how holy they are because they gave this amount. It's not about that. It's about what are we doing to receive the reward we're supposed to get from God. And we're doing these things for the right reasons. Look, you may receive accolades from men, but that will be the extent of your reward. The praise of men may be powerful, but it is not permanent. It doesn't last. The praise of the Father may be delayed, but it is worth the wait. I promise you, it is worth the wait. In Revelation chapter 4, beginning in verse 9, well, what's happening here in chapter 4 of Revelation? You have a picture of all of us standing around the throne of God. And it talks about the 24 elders. And 24 elders receive their crowns. But when they get their crowns, they throw them down at the feet of Jesus. And this is what I want us to see about the rewards we get in heaven. Look at verse 9 of chapter 4 of Revelation. It says that whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who is seated on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders, who, by the way, are the 12 apostles and the 12 heads of the tribes, okay, the 24 elders fell down before him who is seated on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. They cast their crowns before the throne, saying, worthy are you, O Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created. What happens to the glory that we receive in heaven? We turn right around and we throw it down at his feet. Because, folks, it doesn't matter how good we have been in this life. It doesn't matter how much we have given in this life. It doesn't matter how many times we've made it. It doesn't matter if we got a Sunday school pen with a number of dates listed down so far it'll trip us. It doesn't matter how much we've done. What matters is, do you know him? Do you know him? We're not in this for the accolades. And if we receive any accolades, in the end, they go right back to him. Because he is the only one who deserves glory and honor. We don't, but he does. He deserves all the glory, and he's going to receive all the glory. But there is this side where while we're here, we do want to be noticed by God. We do want God to see us, but not in the sense of us showing off and acting as though we are holy, but in truly living for him and serving him. Because I want you to see what happens here. Talks first about the scribes and the Pharisees who do all these things to be seen by everybody. And then in verse 41, he sits down opposite the treasury. And he sees some people, including some of these scribes and Pharisees, giving out of their abundance. They're giving big checks to the treasury of the synagogue. They're giving all this stuff. But he sees this little widow woman. And this little widow woman gives 2 mites, what adds up to a penny. And she puts it in the plate. She doesn't make a big show of it. She doesn't show off and say, look, this is the last penny I've got and I'm giving it to God. She doesn't say that. She doesn't make a big deal out of it at all. She simply puts the penny in the plate. And out of all of the people that were giving that day, Jesus doesn't recognize the one who gave the biggest check. He doesn't recognize the one who gave the most. He recognizes this widow who gave the least, but she gave the most that she could. Out of her poverty, she gave the last penny she had to live And God noticed. God noticed. Listen, folks, why are we doing what we do? Are we doing the right thing for the right reason? Are we living for Him in all that we do? Her goal was not to be noticed at all, but she gave cheerfully out of her poverty. She gave because she wanted to give and wanted to give back to God for all that He had given her, which by man's standards wasn't much, but in her eyes was everything. And she gave back willingly. Why do we give? Do we give cheerfully? Do we pray cheerfully? Do we do all these things knowing that we are giving because God has given so much to us? Listen, we need to be reminded on a regular basis how much God has given us so that we remember what an incredible gift we have in our salvation, what an incredible gift we have in any blessing that we might have in this life. And we need to give and give generously in that. Because it's not about the accolades. It's about obedience. Don't give or pray to be noticed. In Matthew 6, again, Matthew 6, verses 3 and 4. It says, "But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." And in verses 7 to 8, it says, "But when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him." So, in both of these instances, whether it's giving, whether it's praying, who's the audience? Who is our real audience? It's God. We're not doing anything to heap praises on ourselves. We're doing things that give Him glory and honor and give back to Him for all that He has given us. That's why we do it. And listen, I promise you, He notices. The same way Jesus saw this widow, He sees, He knows. Because again, it's not about the accolades, but it's about obedience. Notice in the passage in Matthew chapter 5 and 6, if you look at throughout the entire Sermon on the Mount, there's this running theme where Jesus says, when you do this, don't be like this, but do this. He says it more than once. But it always begins with the when you do this. There is an expectation. There is an expectation here that you will give. There's an expectation that you will pray. There's an expectation that you will fast. There's an expectation that all these things will be done. And He says, when you do it, don't do it to be showy. Don't do it so that everybody around you sees exactly what's going on, but do it for the glory of God and Him alone. Why are we doing these things? It's not about accolades, it's about obedience. So the when you's there, it is expected. It is expected that we pray. It is expected that we give. It is expected that we fast. It is expected that we do all of these things. And when you do them for the right reasons. If we do anything that is noticeable by others at all, it needs to be for the purpose of pointing them to Christ. Because in Matthew chapter 5, at the very beginning of all of this, He says, in the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. So, are we supposed to be seen by others? Yeah. Here's the thing. If you are really and truly giving to God and praying and fasting and doing all the things that we're supposed to do as believers, somebody's going to notice. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. The thing is, are we pointing them then to the Father? Because that's where the glory goes. Because it's not about us. It's not about what we do. It's about what He has done, and we're giving back to Him the glory. So yes, will others see and give glory to the Father in heaven? That's the goal. That's the goal, for them to give glory to the Father in heaven and not to us. It's not about us. It's about Him. Are we giving Him everything? Are we laying everything down at His feet? Listen, I put it this way, and I put it this way often. God does not want your leftovers. And so many times, what we give Him is the leftovers. We take care of ourselves, we do everything else, and then we'll give him the rest of the day. Do you realize that when the tithe is there, which I believe tithing is biblical, so don't misunderstand my earlier statement. I think tithing is biblical. But tithing is off of the first fruits, not off of after what Uncle Sam takes. It's off the first fruits. God's comes first. God gets his before Uncle Sam does. And so it comes off of the beginning of that. And so we need to give and give generously, but we need to do it for the right reasons. Are we giving for the right reasons? Are we showing that kind of humility before God that when people do notice, we point them directly to the only one that matters? Because he gets the glory in it all. So what are our takeaways from today? Well, first of all, give sacrificially. This widow didn't give only what she could give. She gave all that she had. She gave sacrificially. In the same way, there are times when we give it on hurt. Seriously. There are sometimes you may be called to give, and God may be saying, this is what I want you to give, and you're arguing. In the back, I was like, you're wait a minute, God, I can't give that much. I challenge you to outgive God. Good luck. You're not going to be able to outgive God. If he has laid upon your heart something he wants you to give for something, give it. There was a lady in the church that I grew up in. We were having a special offering for something. I don't remember what it was for. And she was being impressed by God to put a $100 bill in the plate. But she was arguing with God throughout the entire service. She didn't want to put a $100 bill in the plate. And she reached in her wallet to grab what she thought was a $10 bill. But when she let go of it, it was a $100 bill. And at that point, her hand's off of it. It looked really bad if she reached in and grabbed it again. So she left it alone. And she gave what God led her to give. Later that week, she had a problem with her car. Her car broke down. And she needed several $100s for her car to be fixed. And she began lamenting over that $100 she had put in the plate. But out of nowhere, somebody from the church went and gave her exactly the amount she needed to get her car fixed. You can't outgive God. You can't go beyond what he can do. But listen, I want to make sure we understand this. We give sacrificially. We don't give expecting something in return. We give sacrificially. The next thing I want you to get is this: pray fervently. Make sure that your prayer is not being done just so others can see, but that we are truly praying. He says about prayer in Matthew's chapter 5, he says that we are to go into our closet and pray, because the Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Now listen, I don't think there's anything wrong with public prayers. I don't think there's anything wrong with corporate prayers. But we need to have a prayer life that is somewhat in secret. There needs to be a prayer life where we are going to God alone, and we're fervently lifting up prayers to him and praying to him and lifting up our loved ones to him, lifting up our church to him, lifting up everything around us to him. Do we have an active prayer life? Give sacrificially. Pray fervently. Live your life, live your life before others, but so that God gets the glory. Make sure that we're living our life before others, but doing it so that God gets the glory. Don't worry about man noticing, because God does. God does. God sees. He knows. And he knows where your heart is. So is there any point in trying to put on airs and put on a show? Because God knows your heart. He knows whether it's real or not. There's no need to be lauded for what you do when God sees and knows. Let's do it for him. Let's do it for his glory. Now, should we do it? Is there an issue of living out the fruit of what we say we believe? Yes, and we should. But let's make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. Are we lifting things up to God? Are we letting him have the glory? And in the end, are we pointing people to him? So I ask this question as we finish. What is your motivation? Do you do good deeds to be seen by men and to glorify God? Which is it? Let's make sure that whatever we do to bring him glory. Let's put him at the forefront of all that we do and make sure he is the one getting all the credit. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you and praise you for all that you've given us. Lord, I pray that you be with each one of us this morning. Father, may we truly be about doing the good deeds that you have called us to do. May we not lose sight of the importance of the obedience in that. And Father, may we also understand and know that we need to be doing this for you above all. That everything that we do is for your glory and to point others to you. Father, if anybody does notice, may we point them directly to you so that you get the glory above everything else. Lord, I thank you, I praise you for what you're going to do in our lives today. We pray that you just speak to all of us. And Father, may you search us and reveal to us our motivations so that we may truly do everything we do for you.